Hey everybody, and welcome to day 2 of our virtual Excel APH career camp for ages 14 to 22. Welcome back, and we're so glad to see everyone here again today. My name is Jennifer Stelmach, and my co-host will be Amber Happ, and we're going to be talking about applications and different aspects of getting a job to continue our week. Did anyone get a chance to start their resumes last night? Can you guys put a Y in the chat box if you got a chance to get started on your resume? Darren started his. Casey's going. Noah said yes, definitely. Awesome, guys. I'm so glad everyone got to start their stuff. I think Anna said yes. Isabel has her hand raised. 1 second. Hey, Isabel, let me unmute you real quick. All right, Isabel, I gave you permission to unmute yourself.
I did my resume last night and today.
Awesome. So happy to hear it.
Thanks.
I'm going to mute you back and we're going to get things rolling.
All right.
Okay, this is Amber, and I'm gonna share my screen for those of you that can see it, and we can get started. So I just want to give a reminder to everybody about the camp rules. If you want to unmute, you need to be called on and have a quiet background. If you have a question, raise your digital hand. We are happy to answer any questions that you may have. Remember to join with a name. If you don't have a name, we will rename you. The chat will only be open when we say so. We want to be respectful of those using screen readers. And also, if you are in the chat, make sure that you switch it over to all panelists and attendees so that you're sending your messages to everybody in the group today. So Jen talked a little bit about the resumes, and we talked about who had completed them or started them, but I want to hear how it went. Did anybody have any success, or were there any unexpected hiccups that may have happened? Go ahead and raise your hand or put it in the chat.
All right, Brianna raised her hand. Let me give her permission. Brianna, you are able to unmute now, and then Anna, I will get to you next.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I did mine and I had a lot of success with it. And so I worked on it with someone and I made sure that it was good quality and it was readable.
That's awesome.
Nice work.
I like how you said that you worked on it with somebody. Sometimes you get the best ideas when you're brainstorming with somebody else. It's a good thinking.
Next up, we have Anna. All right, I released your permission to talk, Anna.
Sorry, I was finishing making my bed. I technically didn't do it last night because I've had mine done. I've had to do it about 5 times for different school assignments, so I just keep all the versions and just touch up some things.
That's the way even I do it as an adult. So keep up that method because it's way easier than starting over.
Nice job, Anna. And I see Casey in the chat says, I was going to use a template, but ended up writing one up from a blank Google Doc. Nice. I like how everybody's got their own method of creating the resume. And if you weren't able to log in yesterday, a resume is a document that lists your work experience, your volunteer experience, education, skills, strengths, or achievements. And yesterday we touched on it, that it needed to be about 1 print page long with 10 to 12 point font. So it shouldn't be too lengthy, just all of your most relevant information and most recent info. And you just want to include anything that you're proud of, any achievements, any clubs, certifications, any special skills that you have.
Noah said it went well at first, but then I tried racking my brain to remember everything I'd ever participated in, going all the way back to preschool, and it didn't really work. I took a break and turned to my parents for help when they got home, because I figured they'd remember more than I did. And Noah, because remember we talked about the relevant, so make sure you're using just the relevant stuff. You may not have to go back quite as far to get things that are relevant to the person you've become today, because I'm sure you've worked very hard to gain skills over the years, even if it's just responsibility and good communication and that kind of stuff. But stuff back to pre-K probably is a little bit far to stretch.
I know sometimes for me, when I'm updating my resume, there's some things that I really want to keep on it that I'm proud of, but that they're not really relevant and they happened so long ago that I end up having to take them off. So it's not easy. I totally get that. Everybody has to deal with it.
All right. Oh, he said sorry. No, there's nothing to be sorry about. It's just a learning curve. This is how we learn to make a really nice, really solid base for your resume. That's why we're all talking about it, because I have a feeling somebody else did the exact same thing and just wasn't writing about it.
Thanks for all the participation, if I can say it, participation so far, everybody. I love hearing what everybody's got to say and how their process went. So for today, our vocabulary words are application, interview, hiring manager, personal reference, professional reference, and internship. So if you don't know what these words are, we will make sure that you do by the end of camp today. So show what you know. What is one thing that you want to know or that you already do know about searching for an open position or a volunteer position? You can raise your hand or write it in the chat. What do you know about searching for open jobs?
Anna has her hand raised. I've released your permission, so you can unmute Anna if you'd like to.
Sorry, I just forgot to raise the hand. I thought it did it automatically. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. I can release it. That's fine.
Oh, Miles said that he uses the internet, or that you could use the internet to find positions. So that's one thing that you already know. Anybody else have any ideas or something that you want to learn?
Notice that he's afraid. I guess he probably just doesn't know where to begin. Sometimes internet things can be very daunting and overwhelming. So we can start kind of giving you guys a basis of ideas where to start looking. Searching for open jobs can be very competitive. Yes, it can. Casey said that it's a competitive market, and it is. That's why a lot of the time we're going to start talking about some volunteer positions today, because sometimes you can get a volunteer position first to gain some of these skills that you would need to show that you're competitive for the paid positions. Some jobs require you to attend certain schools, Connor said, and that's very true. But some do not. So it's finding one that's geared to your current situation. And it says sometimes a friend or acquaintance can help you find a job opening, and that's very true. And then Noah said, what I'm trying to say is he doesn't know much about the subject. And that's where we're here to help.
Those are some great points, everybody. So I hopefully we can touch on all those and you won't feel as nervous, or it won't be as daunting after today. So before you start, yesterday we talked a little bit about how some states have different laws about the minimum age that you have to be to start working. And they also may limit the number of hours that you may work per week. Did anybody research what their state laws were?
Or does anyone just happen to know off the top of their head what age you can start working at and what state you're in? Noah said he can if we want him to. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick.
Anna said that in Pennsylvania it's 15, she thinks, miles. In Georgia, I think it's 14. Connor said in Utah 14, or Brandon said maybe 16. So it definitely is something that you need to look into if you're not sure what the age is, because you want to make sure that you're legal, that you can work. In Florida, it's 14. So it's kind of around that 14 to 16-year-old range.
And I Googled state age or child labor. What did I type here? Working age for child labor by state, and a whole chart actually popped right up. So and it actually goes state by state to tell you what age you can go in each state. So it was actually, that's some information you guys can find easily if you're interested in it. Because it looks like some states have even more broken down specific laws. Like you can get an age at 12 with written parental consent on a farm in certain places. Like it gets very specific. So there is an easy chart for that one. Most don't allow you to work more than, and Anna said most states don't allow you to work more than 30 hours per week, which is true. And in some states it's even lower than that, the lower in age you are. Like 14-year-olds can work up to 15 hours a week, I think, in Florida. So it varies by age and by the amount of hours and that kind of stuff by state.
Great. And before you can start the application process too, you want to remember to have your resume completed so that when you find a good one, you can apply right away. So where do you even find open positions? Does anyone have an idea? You can raise your hand and share, write in the chat.
Mike asked if he can list babysitting and lawn care as skills on his resume. Yes, absolutely, Mike. That is really good skills to put, because those are definitely jobs, while they may not be jobs that are above the table, and they may not be like you didn't have to file an application and you didn't have to go in the same way that you would for like a standard job, they're definitely still jobs.
I always listed babysitting on my resume when I was in high school, because that was something that I did. And it shows that you have a lot of skills. Like we've been talking about time management. You're responsible for little ones that you have to take care of. So there are a lot of skills that employers can kind of read between the lines when you list those jobs.
Brianna said you can find it on social media. The other Brianna said look on a job website. Elizabeth said check out stores and childcare, and Anna said animal shelters. Noah said online, I suppose.
Those are awesome ideas, and there are really like limitless ways that you can find open positions. I didn't even include any of those in my slides, so you guys are thinking outside the box. But the first one I have is word of mouth. When I was in high school, I always found jobs just by friends of friends or teachers, and they'd be, hey, just so you know, there's a position open at the baseball field as a concession stand attendant. That's how I got my first job, actually. So just by knowing people, sometimes you can find out where there are openings for jobs or volunteer positions. Also, advertising. If somebody needs to have someone fill a position, they're going to be advertising because they want that position filled so that they're not short-staffed. And a job listing website. As you get older, you'll definitely use websites more so to find jobs, such as LinkedIn. That's a great networking opportunity. That there are always jobs listed on this website. And then for certain careers, there's also websites available just to list what jobs are available for those careers or those fields. a sign at the company may advertise that they're hiring. Especially now, I go in almost any restaurant and there is a sign on the door that says that they're hiring and that they need staff right away. You could also ask the company if they're hiring. That doesn't hurt. Go ahead and ask them. Go in if you're interested somewhere and say, hey, are you guys by chance hiring anybody, or do you need help here? That is a great way to find out if the place that you want to work is actually hiring. And more, you guys listed places that I didn't. I love that somebody said social media, because that is the way that it's going these days. Everybody uses social media and they are advertising for jobs or positions there.
Anna did say in the chat that depending on the skill level, career path, and education, sometimes employers will seek you out, which is true. And that's just really dependent on your skill set and what the employer needs at the time. But for going in and just asking if companies are hiring, that's how I got all my first jobs. I went right in, and I actually probably went to like 10 places in a day. I was like, hi, I was wondering if you were hiring and if I could get an application. And I might only get one phone call back, but I did the legwork and took a little bit of time and went around, and it paid off in the end just to take that time. Brianna said classifieds is another one.
Yeah, there are limitless ways that people can advertise that they're hiring or that they need help. So if you just think outside the box of these typical ones, you may find some really good options. So one of the big ways to find open jobs or to find applications is using the internet. There's so many valuable resources out there, but I do want to make a point that you want to use trusted and reputable websites, such as ones that end in .org to search for jobs, just to make sure that they're safe websites and that what they're advertising is actually true. And if you aren't sure, you can ask a trusted adult or a parent or a teacher if the website is safe to use. And I've listed one by APH, and they have a website, and it's called careerconnect.org. And they have so many resources available for job seekers that can help you find open positions. And not just adults, they have resources for young job seekers like yourself. And one of the websites is the Bureau of Labor, and they have different resources and career information to see how to get a job and doing what you actually like. And another one is the Workforce Recruitment Program. And this one actually connects employers with students who have job aspirations and who have disabilities, that they're already out there saying that they want to hire people that may have a visual impairment, or they're open to having all sorts of people with different abilities work for them. So these are really great websites and resources, and they're all listed on APH Career Connect. And APH Career Connect has valuable information really for your whole life, and they have dozens of links that can help you depending on your interests. So this could be something that you use really the rest of your life, because they had stuff that I had no idea about even. So they're on top of it.
Connor said in the chat this summer, because he knew someone awesome, he was offered a job, and of course we know her that her name is Robin. And then Nina said, think of it like this: if you want to be an editor, looking at YouTubers can be a good idea, since many are looking for editors. But no, if you want to be I think YouTubers may not be your best bet if you want to be a pharmacist. So yeah, definitely gearing your search to the area that you're interested in is very important. If you're not interested in a restaurant job, I wouldn't go door to door to restaurants asking if you can work there.
That's a good point. So our next slide is about local agencies for the blind and visually impaired. Who knows of a local resource for the blind and visually impaired that may be able to help you find a job or somewhere to volunteer? Does anybody know of any?
Vocational rehab. Noah said yours. Casey said VR, vocational rehab.
Those are great. I love how people are thinking about VR services.
Yeah, Noah said APH. And in North Florida, we have the Division of Blind Services. Jacob said he's never heard of VR. VR is vocational rehab. And most, I think every state has a vocational rehab program, if not most do. And that is a program you would have to apply to through your state for services. If you have a lighthouse near you, a lighthouse for the blind, that's another, I know, Florida based. And I'm skipping ahead on this. I mean, Amber's stuff here, apparently.
Jen's thinking the same as me. Yeah. So Division of Blind Services. I know in other states they're called other things, but in Florida it is DBS, if you've heard of that. The lighthouses for the blind, they can go by other names too. In Florida, there's a Vision Education Rehabilitation Center for the blind. And there are several different resources available in whatever state or city you're in, and then those VR centers. So all of these organizations, they have programs in place already that help place people with visual impairments in the job force. So they may offer things such as job coaching or how to dress for success. They also offer O&M for getting to your job. So they already have these programs in place, and it's definitely worth reaching out if you're interested in learning more about them for whatever area that you're in. And I'm just thinking too, maybe your local school for the blind, or if there's a camp, they might be able to put you in contact with somebody if they know of any jobs. So you really have to have an open mind and just think outside the box. And when you're looking for jobs, because it is a very huge field. So if you go in knowing of some opportunities, that will help you out. So, but wait, before you can apply, most job applications are on the company's websites. So like I said, have a trusted adult with you so that you know it's a safe website, and you will be sharing information and very important details about yourself, and the website needs to be approved before you can use it, just to make sure that it's doing what it says it's doing. And while we're touching on the point about safe websites and putting information into an application, I want to make sure that you guys all are aware that you need to have really strong tech skills, because you're going to be navigating numerous websites and applications all throughout the hiring process and into your job. So you need to work on those skills so that you're comfortable navigating applications and websites independently. So if you're not comfortable using JAWS or ZoomText or whatever your accessible technology is, now is the time to kind of hone up on those skills and work on them so that you can be comfortable in the future and at your job. So let's play some true or false. So number one, true or false? You will need to upload your resume to the job application and input the information from your resume into the application. Is that true or false?
Miles said true. Sanaya said true. Elizabeth said true. Kennedy Faith said true. Noah said false. And I will go ahead and apologize in advance if I butcher any of your names. I'm really sorry. Anna said true.
Good. So it is true. So we touched on this a little bit yesterday. So you'll need to upload your resume to the job application, and everything that was in your resume, you're most likely going to have to transfer into that application with all of the dates, the employers, and any pertinent information about those jobs and from your resume, such as your education, your contact info. So that's why I want to stress that you want to have that resume already ready by the time that you go to apply, because you will need it and all of the information in it. All right, so for number two, the application will ask you personal questions like what your social security number or address is. Is that true or false? What does everybody think?
Noah said true, definitely true. Miles said true. Elizabeth said true. Casey said true. Darren said true. All trues so far.
Great. Yeah. So you need to know what your social security number is. If you've never heard of that, go ahead and ask your parents. You get a little card right when you're born, and it has a number on it, and that is a number to identify yourself with, and you'll need it for every job that you have and for many things in life. So if you don't know what that number is by heart, now's the time to learn it and memorize it. So it will ask you what that is when you're filling out an application many times, and it will ask what your address is also. So it's going to ask you important information and personal things.
It is really important though on that number to keep it kind of safe, because it is actually like a link that people could steal your identity with. So when you're putting in applications, you want to make sure if the application is just going to get set on a desk out in a public place, like I know some restaurants just get busy, and when you're filling out an application, it's not always necessary on your original application. You will absolutely need it when you're turning in your financial information, but because that number is so important and it really is a link back to, like, that's how people get their identity stolen sometimes. So like, it's just one of those numbers you really need to keep safe, and you don't want to tell it to people who don't really need it. You don't want to ever just plug it in online on a website. If someone ever calls you like, oh, I'm some so-and-so credit card company, we need to know your social, that's not a number you give out ever. More than likely that's a scam. So it's really, you have to just kind of be careful where you're giving that information out.
Definitely. I'm glad that you touched on that, because it's so important that this is a private thing that you need to, that's why memorizing it's helpful. So you're not just having it written down or saved in your phone or anything like that. So keep it near and dear. And I see Miles said, so every person has a number. Yes, every person does have a number. Your guardian or your parents should have that for you. So next, number 3, a personal reference and a professional reference are the same thing. Is that true or false? Do they do the same thing? Are they the same purpose?
Brianna said false. Noah said true. Miles said false. Casey said false. Elizabeth said true. Sanaya said false.
Sounds like it's some mixed answers here. So let me clear that up. A personal reference and a professional reference are actually not the same thing. So a personal reference is someone that has known you for some time and can speak on your abilities, your experience, your characters and skills, but it's somebody that you haven't worked with in a job. It could be a neighbor or a friend. So it's somebody that you know personally. And a professional reference is the same thing. They can speak on your abilities and your skills and your experience, but you know them from a professional setting, such as maybe a teacher or a coworker, someone you've worked with at camp, maybe a counselor or a coach. So they are from a professional setting. So many times when you're applying for a job, they will ask for references. And what that means is they're just going to reach out to these people and they're going to make sure that you're somebody that they want to work with them, that you're responsible and you're timely. And sometimes they will ask for a personal reference or a professional reference. So it's important to know the difference between those two.
I want to try a little one here. For your personal reference, true or false, your mom is a good personal reference? We've got a true from Connor. Noah said true. Miles said true. Darren said true. Brianna said true. This is the first one I think that we've actually seen that most of you guys are actually got it wrong. Usually you cannot use your parents because they're a little biased. Parents love you and they should. You guys are awesome. But when it comes to referencing you for a job, parents use 98% of the time going to say, oh, my kid is the best. They're awesome. They're so loving. They're so caring. And not always is it the right fit for a job, though. So usually you want to use someone who's a little bit more detached from you for your personal reference.
Nice. I'm
Yep,
glad that we cleared that up a little, because that can get tricky. It's like when you're thinking about who can I include, because most likely you're close with all these people, or that you have a good relationship with everybody, no matter if they are personal or professional. So it is tricky to kind of navigate who you want to use for what, but typically moms and dads aren't. They'll always say good things, which is nice.
And Connor said, what about your friends? Friends can be good, but you want to do somebody who has a good professional standing. While it's still your personal reference, you want someone who is relatable to an employer and who can show well to say, this is why this person would be a good fit for your job, because you're still applying for a job. You wouldn't want to have your 15-year-old brother say, well, he doesn't clean his room and he doesn't do this. That's not going to be a very good personal reference in your situation. As you get older, that may change some. We got someone asked about your siblings. That could be hit or miss. If you have a sibling who works in the setting that you're applying for and could say, yeah, he does great. We're trying to wait tables. They've come in and helped out in the restaurant I work in. They're really good at this, this, and this. It's kind of hit or miss. It's dependent, I guess, on what you're doing, what they do, how you're going to use that reference.
These are great questions. I love how everybody's writing what they're thinking in the comments. For our next one, true or false? It doesn't matter what your reference says about you because they are not applying for the job. You are. Is that true or false?
Noah said false. Brianna said false. Casey said false. Darren said false. Brianna said she thinks it depends. Elizabeth said false. Miles said false.
Good. So this one actually is false. You want to make sure that it's somebody that will be able to speak on your abilities, your character, your skills. And if they're saying things that maybe aren't true or that wouldn't benefit you at all in the job hiring process, you probably don't want to include somebody like that. And I've actually made this mistake before. I've chosen somebody that I worked with and we were really good friends. But when it came time for her to fill out the reference, she actually took like over a week to do it. And that looks bad on you, that the person that you've asked to say all these wonderful things about you and speak on your abilities, and it takes them over a week to do this. So you want to make sure that you're choosing somebody that will also be timely and that is responsible. So our next one, when you use someone as a reference, it should be a surprise that they were chosen. Is this true or false?
False. False. Both Brianna said false. Sanaya said false. Miles said false. Casey said false. Connor said false.
Good. So that is false. When you use someone as a reference in an application, you want to make sure that you ask their permission first. You want to make sure that they're okay providing this information about you and that they will speak on your abilities and speak honestly about your character. And when you do ask them if they can be your reference, you may also want to get their contact information if you don't already have it, such as their phone number or their email, because that is how your future employer will reach out to them. They'll either give them a call or send them an email so that they can kind of get to know what your abilities are better. So number 6, the application may include a personality quiz. What does everybody think? Is that true or false?
Miles said true. Connor and Sanaya both said true. Brianna said depends. We got Anna Rishma said true. Casey said true. Darren said true.
I feel like some of you have filled out applications before. I thought this was going to be a tricky one. So that is true. Sometimes applications will kind of have you fill out a personality quiz. They'll ask you specific questions to screen and determine if the job that you're applying for is appropriate for you based on the company's beliefs, their ethics. So they may even ask you what you would do in various scenarios or situations. They could ask you kind of to determine maybe what your problem solving skills are. So
we got a couple people with their hands up. I saw Cameron, you had your hand up. If you'd like to put it back up, I can release your thing to talk. And then Brianna has her hand up. So Brianna, I've opened up your ability to unmute.
Yeah, I actually have a relatable experience. So when I was applying for this internship at my school for like teaching, this teacher like knows like personalities of like which range would fit for you for kids. Basically she said like for me, based on like my personality, she says I'm really good with younger kids. And I thought that was super duper helpful because like she knows like what she's been doing it for like over 20 years and she like knows what she's doing. And I think it's like really helpful sometimes when like other people know your abilities too. So that way it just causes less stress because I was still figuring out. But when she said it, I was like perfect for young kids, that was just very helpful for me.
that's a great point to make because this could also be maybe a vetting process to determine the questions that they're asking you. Is this something that you'd still be interested in? If they're asking you many questions of something that you have no idea what it's about, maybe you want to rethink the job that you're applying to. So I love that you shared that, Brianna. And did we have someone else with their hand raised?
She put it down, so I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, so our next one. You don't need to know your reference that well to include them on your application. Is that true or false?
We have a false from Brianna. False from Miles. False from Elizabeth and Noah and Casey. Seems like a unanimous false on this one so far.
So you actually do need to know your reference pretty well, and they need to know you very well because you want them to be able to speak on your abilities easily and truthfully. They should know you well enough to be able to answer questions about you very quickly. So if an employer asks your reference, is Jen on time? Is she somebody that is? She's shaking her head. No, just no. Maybe not that question, but they could ask other questions, and you want the reference to be able to answer truthfully and quickly. They shouldn't have to think about things too in depth and try and come up with an answer. It should just roll off the tongue when they ask about you. Oh, I love what Brianna just said in the chat. It's good to have a reputation too in your community. Yeah. Or the place where you worked at. Yeah. You want to be making these personal connections with people in your community or not your school. You want to be able to have all these connections with your teachers or with counselors or just in your community setting, because these people could all be references for you, or you could even be a reference for them. Speaking of, has anybody been a reference for another person? For maybe a volunteer position or a club at school? Sometimes you have to have references to join a club even.
Brianna said she has.
That's great.
Talking about that idea, what about, can you use an old employer as a reference? So maybe you quit a job, so you're like, oh, a little bit worried that maybe that person won't like you because you quit their job, but you put in their 2 weeks notice and you did everything correctly. Do you think that's still somebody you might be able to use as a reference? Brianna said yes. Connor and Casey both said yes. People move on from jobs all the time. If you quit your job by just walking out on a Thursday afternoon and never came back, do you think you should use that old employer as a reference? I got no's with exclamation marks. No. Yeah, a bunch of exclamation marks that time from Noah. Absolutely not. Yeah, they won't like that, and you're not gonna like what they tell your next employer because they're not gonna call you a reliable employee. You don't want to do that as an employee anyways. But if something happened and that's how the situation went down, you want to make sure that you are using references that are going to give you a good reference. Anna said, yes, depending on the laws, they may only be able to say the amount of time you work there and whether you would be eligible to be rehired. That is true. But an employer is going to take, if you go in and say, I can tell you as a reference and say that that's all you're going to tell them, they're probably not going to think that you left in a very good stance. They're going to read I would think that they'd probably read between the lines and be like, oh, there's some animosity there. There's something that didn't go well, because they're not going to tell me anything. Can you have more than one reference? It depends on the application. Many have a specific amount they want. 3 is kind of the average number I've seen, 3 to 4. And it just depends on what company you're applying for and what application. Yes, you're right. And sometimes that's all they can say. And it's not whether they liked you.
Great
Different
discussion.
Different rules, that's true.
So our next true or false, you should hear back from the company you applied to immediately. Is that true or false?
Anna said no. Sanaya said thumbs down. Casey said false. Miles said false. Brianna said, I think it depends. Joseph said no. Noah said it depends. Normally he'd say false. Elizabeth said false.
Good. Everyone's thinking the same thing. So that is false. After submitting an application, you need to wait for the hiring manager or the supervisor, which would really just be the boss in that situation, the person in charge, to contact you. This could take several weekdays to happen, maybe a week to 2 weeks. And that's probably because the hiring manager has other responsibilities and other applications that they need to go through on top of all of their other regularly scheduled duties at the company. And it's important just to remain patient, to breathe, and they'll get to you eventually. But typically, several weekdays, 1 to 2 weeks is the time frame that it may take. And some jobs, they actually list that the position will be open for people to apply for a certain amount of time. So it could be that the position's open until the end of July and that they won't even be reaching out to people until after everybody's had a chance to apply. So it will take time, and you just have to breathe and be patient about it.
Do you think that you will always get a reply when you apply for a job? If you turn in an application just at a local store or something, do you think you're always going to have somebody call you and tell you that I've got Anna and Miles and Brianna all said no? And that's true. Sometimes if you're just turning in a standard application and just saying, well, I'm here, I'm available, I'm looking for a position, I want to leave it open in case you need somebody in the future, they may just put your application in a file to keep for future reference if they ever do need somebody, but you may not always hear back for them to tell you yes or no. As you get higher into the career type jobs versus just kind of a part-time job, you are more likely to get a response and just where they'll tell you that they're sorry, they're going with another applicant as you progress through the career ladder.
Great. So our next section is going to be personal reference or professional reference. I want you guys to be able to tell me if this is a personal reference or a professional reference. So previous employers or supervisors, is that personal or professional?
Casey said professional. Brianna said professional. If y'all just want to type PRO and PER and not type out those long words, you're welcome to. I know that's a lot.
Good call.
Karen said pro. Joseph said personal. Sanaya said personal. Connor said professional. Elizabeth said professional. Kind of got a mixed bag on that one.
Yeah. So a previous employer or supervisor would be a professional reference. They can speak on your ability in the workplace. They can talk about any work-related skills that you have and be specific about that. And I see Noah in the chat, professional, but didn't we say you shouldn't do that? So it depends on your relationship with the employer or the supervisor. Like Jen was saying, if you walked out on the middle of a shift, probably don't want to include them as one of your references. But if you had a good relationship with them and you think that they could speak on your abilities truthfully and in a good light, then yeah, go ahead and use them as a professional reference if you can. But yeah, make sure you ask permission too, so that they are aware that it could be coming their way. Coaches, would this be personal or professional?
Personal said Miles. Elizabeth said personal. Brianna said either. Sanaya said professional. Joseph said personal. Casey said personal.
Good. So I had put down that it's typically a personal reference, but this could be one of those ones that is more fluid. If you don't have many people that could be a reference, but you have a relationship with a coach that is more professional and they can speak, maybe if it's a teacher also at your school, but they also happen to be a coach, that could be a professional, but typically it's more of a personal reference that you would have with a coach. Okay, what about neighbors? What does everybody think? Personal or professional?
Personal, 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 personal. Seems pretty unanimous on this one.
Good.
Personal.
Personal, yeah, your neighbor's going to be a personal reference. Good job, guys. Okay, what about coworkers? What's everybody thinking? They be personal or professional? I see some professionals. It depends. So typically a coworker would be a professional reference because they can speak on any work-related skills that you have and how you perform in a job capacity. So they would be a professional reference. Oh, I love what Jen said. There will always be exceptions. These are just typically the norm for what the professional, the personal would be. That is so true. Okay, what about teachers? They be personal or professional?
Brianna said both. Connor said professional. Sanaya said personal. Noah said professional. Joseph said professional. Miles said personal. Elizabeth said professional.
Yeah, so kind of a mixed here, and going back to what Jen said, there are exceptions. So typically for people in that 14-year-old high school range, a teacher would be considered more of a professional reference. But as you get older, that teacher may, if you keep up a relationship with them, they may turn into more of a personal reference. But at your age, typically a teacher could be considered professional. Hey, what about family, friends? Personal or professional?
Personal, 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 personal.
Good. Yeah, that's a personal reference. They don't know and can't speak on your abilities in a job or any sort of work related capacity. So they would be a personal reference. Nice job, everybody. Oh, and before we move on, are there any questions about references since we just kind of went through those?
Brianna had a question. Let me release your mic.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do have one question. So like when you talk about like professional and personal, do like jobs want more like professional more than personal once you like start to get like older and go into like more of the higher positions in career?
Definitely. At this point in my life, I don't think I include any personal references on a job application. And they will ask specifically sometimes for a professional reference. So, but for jobs that teenagers will be applying to, they might not mind if it's a personal reference or a professional reference, and they'll let you know what kind of reference they're looking for. That was a
And
great
the
question.
and then another question, for like we were talking about resumes yesterday, but I was like looking it up, but do you have to like include your high school resume once you put your college resume, or you could start to take things off like as you go higher and higher?
Yeah, so I don't include my high school information on my resume as I've gotten older. You end up running out of room on your resume, and you want to make sure that that resume is around 1 page. So as you get more and more experience, you will have to edit that and choose and decide what's relevant and what's important to keep on that resume. Did that answer
Yeah.
your question?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And I'm the opposite. I left mine on there. I keep my GPA because my GPA was pretty high through high school. So I just leave all I have is Fernandina Beach High School, my graduating year, and my GPA. So it's one line. I didn't go into like my clubs and sports and all that kind of stuff. I just put the basic information on there. So it's really kind of a personal opinion on that one, how it fits into your page.
Yeah, everybody's it's going to be different because everybody has unique skills and they're applying for particular positions that it's important. Like Jen said yesterday, she wanted to keep her high school on there because she works in the district that the high school is in. So that's important. The employers may look for that. So whatever job you're applying for, you could be editing your resume for each job. So you want to make sure it, like we said, it's a running document and you've got access to it so that you can just update it and edit it when you need to.
Miles had his hand up. I released your mic, Miles.
Audio now unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I wanted to know, so there's professional and then there's personal. So we were talking about you could have a certain number on your application, but does it matter how many personal and how many professional? Like, can you have like 1 professional, 3 personal, or 3 professional, 1 personal, or something like that?
At your age, I think either is totally fine, whatever combination of. As you get older and like say you're applying for like a career job, if you were to be a teacher or an engineer, they're probably going to specifically say we need 3 professional references when it's time.
That was a great question. And the application it should let you know. And if you have questions, go ahead and ask them. I'm sure they would be happy to answer those for you for whatever specific application that you're filling out. So after you apply, and once you hear back from the company that you applied for, they will let you know if they can schedule time with you for an interview, which is exciting. An interview is a formal meeting between you and the employer. And the interview is just the opportunity for that employer to assess any of your qualifications, your skills, to see if you'd be a good fit for the position. And this is also your chance to see if you would be a good fit, if they would be a good fit for you. Did you like what the interviewer had to say? Did you get a good vibe, a good feeling there? So you will both be kind of assessing each other, but the interviewer will be asking most of the questions.
Isabel had her hand up. And then we're down to like 7 minutes. So we'll probably stop taking questions after that one, Isabel, so we can get the last little bit. I opened up your mic though, Isabel.
Unmute button, Zoom webinar, lower hand button.
Can you get jobs at age 12?
It's state dependent. You would just have to Google what your state laws are, and I hadn't heard of it until today when I was reading that chart I sent you guys. And in that chart it said some states allow you to work on a farm in an agricultural setting for X amount of hours. So it's really specific to the state and location that you're in. but I think the standard minimum age is kind of 14 in a lot of places.
Oh, okay.
Good question. Okay, so tell us about it. What's one new thing that you learned today? You can write it in the chat, or if you have a quick comment, we can unmute you and you can tell us what you learned.
Jeff said, Mike says his resume states references available upon request. So he can pick the best references for each interview. And that's absolutely available. And that's absolutely an option for your resume. The only time that that'll be a little bit tricky is if you are going to put it on an application. You really need to have those person's information available to you. But you can just take that with you. Maybe have a note in your phone that you keep that information on so you could plug it into that application. Noah said he learned about the difference between personal and professional references. Woohoo, that was one of our goals of the day.
Good, and you can keep on writing those in, and I'm gonna just move on to explain the day 2 extension activity. So today we would love if you could discover appropriate jobs for yourself. So brainstorming different career paths that you would like to work in or volunteer for, and just do it on a blank document on your computer. And things to think about are your likes and dislikes. So do you like spending time outside? Do you like working inside? Do you prefer working with people your own age? So these are things that you could consider as you're thinking about appropriate jobs for yourself. Also, think about your age. Is it realistic for somebody your age to choose that they want to be a doctor, that they can go start working in a doctor's office as a physician right away? Probably not. Some jobs may require you to be a certain age, and you can only work for that certain amount of time each day. And it's really just not reasonable for a teenager to have certain jobs. Like a teenager can't be a teacher or a doctor or a professional chef, but that doesn't mean that you can't work in those fields. So if you want to be a doctor and you know that your heart's set on that, maybe you could volunteer at a local clinic, a nursing home, a hospital. Or if you want to be a teacher, you could maybe look for jobs in childcare, tutoring, camping. You could be a counselor. So just because you can't be it right now, you can still work in those fields. Also, think about your visual ability. If you have no vision, it might not be realistic to have certain jobs. Think about, if you have no vision, is it safe for you to be a golf cart driver at a golf course? Or maybe a lifeguard at your local pool? So think about your vision and your ability to access visual information and what jobs would be realistic and appropriate for you. Also think about the location that you're applying to jobs in. Maybe you want to work at a beach or on a farm, but you don't live near a beach or a farm. So think about where you live and easy ways for you to get to those job locations.
And you also can keep in mind that if you're doing maybe a volunteer position first to gain some experience, it doesn't have to be like a full-time volunteer position. You can look for events in your area. Like I know I help run a golf cart poker run, and it's one day every year. It's not a big commitment, but I'm out there for a full day, and we have people who volunteer for 3 hours, 6 hours, 10 hours. But it's just somewhere they can gain that working experience. And it's something that we have had a couple of kids who have been awesome helpers, and we have them helping with more of our events now. And we actually have one girl that we're paying as an assistant now. So there was like a building process to it where she's actually making some money off of it. So you don't have to start out with like volunteering at an animal shelter where you have to go every Saturday and spend your whole day and do that kind of thing. Like you can kind of think outside the box when you're first gaining these experiences.
That's such a good point. And that's a great networking opportunity, is if you're going to these experiences and events, you can meet people that you can kind of just introduce yourself to, and so that they know who you are, and you become a familiar face and a familiar name, so that they can maybe come back to you if something does come up in the future. So that is your activity for today, is to do some research. think about what is an appropriate job for yourself and how you can find that they're available.
All right, guys, we have about 1 minute left. Did anyone have a last question before we hop off? And tomorrow we will be talking about getting ready for your interview and the interviewing process. And I don't see any questions. Awesome. And
Well, thank you guys so much. I hopped back on. I finally had internet access. Woo! I hope you all had a great time. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thank you, Jen and Amber, for a wonderful session. Thank you, closed captioning, for your provision.